Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Enlightened Awakening, episode number 11. That's a good number for you, isn't it?
Oh, it's, my favorite number. And, a lot of times I'll look at the clock or look at my phone and I see 11s.
Yes, I've been seeing it a lot lately, too.
Have you?
So today on the show, I have Miss Catherine Corona. Please join me in welcoming her. She is a gifted meditation practitioner and auteur. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. A generous spiritual giantess helping folks to expand on their spirituality daily. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you, Shannon. Good to be here.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Yes, you're welcome. It's my favorite subject.
Mine too. So tell us, who is Catherine Corona? What has your life journey been like so far?
Well, since we're talking about enlightened awakening, well, other than all the other stuff in life, I started really when I was about 5, asking, well, I'll tell you what happened. My family went to northern Wisconsin near the Canadian border for summers. And when I was about 5, I asked, could I walk in the woods by myself? Before that, I always had to walk with a parent. And when I was 5, they said, okay, you're old enough now, you can go into the woods by yourself. So I went off following a animal trail, probably a deer trail. And I was finally by myself. And I looked up through the canopy of trees and the leaves and saw the clouds and the blue sky. And I thought to myself, this isn't real. This doesn't look real. I want to pull back. I want to pull it all back and see what's behind it. It's beautiful, but there's got to be more. And
wow.
Yeah.
That's a gigantic thought for a 5-year-old.
That was my thought. And the first thought as a 5-year-old was, well, what's behind the clouds and the sky and what I'm looking up through the trees? And I thought to myself, well, it's the stars. The stars are there. But I just can't see them because the sun's out. So this is a 5-year-old thought process. And then I saw the stars. It's like the curtain parted and I could see the stars, and then I could hear the stars, and I could hear them singing to each other. And I knew that they were all friends. As a 5-year-old mind, I was like, they are friends, and they sing to each other because they like each other. And wow. So the songs that they sung, which today as I am, I know they were basically vibrational frequencies, melodies, refined melodies and frequencies that everything is created from, right? We're all created out of light and color and sound, vibrational frequencies. And depending on if you're awake and aware in the refined levels of soul levels, what I call soul levels, the spiritual levels beyond the psychic material worlds, every level has a sound, a vibrational frequency. These sounds, some people, depending on how you're geared, if you're auditory, you might hear them. If you're kinesthetic, maybe you feel them as if they're a rhythm or a pulsing. If you're visual, maybe you'll see the colors of the frequency. And in that moment of looking at the stars and hearing their songs, what I called their songs as a 5-year-old, and getting attuned to the vibrational frequencies of that level of existence, then that door was open to attune myself to all the frequencies. As I learned over many, many years, I've been practicing this now, since I was 5, and I'm 68. So that's a long time. But attune myself and refine that. What I learned later is that every faith tradition has an awareness of what I now call, what the Sufis call, the sound current. So the sound current is that vibrational frequency, or what is how the creator creates out of really song, in a way that you can see, feel, or hear when you open your spiritual ears. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing. Who are the Sufis?
Sufis are an esoteric branch of Islam.
Oh,
And
okay.
some people, and they chant the word hue. A lot of people know from practicing yoga the word Om. Om
Yes.
can be considered a vibrational frequency, a sound of the created universe. And hue, as practiced by Sufis, Ekankar, Aramaic Christians, is a sound, a Sanskrit word or an Arabic word, a sound that goes beyond the psychic material worlds, the universes, into the pure spiritual worlds. So now we're talking about spiritual practices and chanting a tone or using a tone to attune yourself to that frequency, so you can start to become awake to it and aware of it and ride it, just like the word is the sound current, like a river. You can jump into that river, this gentle, beautiful river of sound, and let it carry you back into the heart of God.
Like a tuning fork.
We become like a tuning fork.
Oh, I love it. I've never heard it explained that way. And I love that explanation. That is just like beautiful. Makes a lot of sense. So that was actually going to be my first question. You have 5 spiritual daily practices, correct?
So, yes. So what many people I had a more formalized meditation practice for about 50 years. And people would ask me, how do I meditate? Can you teach me to meditate? And I thought to myself, I don't think they're really asking to meditate, because I think they don't know that that's just one part of spiritual practices. And I think what a lot of people are looking for, I mean, take this or leave it, check it out for yourself, but they're looking for a connection with the source, with what's greater than themselves, with the eternal, with the soul level, with the spiritual level, the levels beyond the psychic material worlds, into those refined, where we're eternal, what our home is, where we come from. I think that's when I asked as a 5-year-old, this isn't real, let's pull back the curtain, what's really there? I was asking for, where do I come from? Where does everything come from? I want to go there. This is beautiful. The forest, the woods, the life, the human life, the laughter, the relationships. It's beautiful. And this is part of divinity. But I want to go to divinity itself.
You know what this is? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, please.
I was going to say, you know what this reminds me of is yesterday, somewhere on social media. I don't remember where it was. I think it was a short or a reel that I saw. And this guy had invented this device that he could connect it to a plant and turn the plant's electric energy into sound. And he was like, let's see what this plant sounds like. And it sounded like a kind of like vibrational tone type music. And it was really wild. And he was like, each plant sounds different. I was like,
Sure.
whoa. I
Yeah.
have to send it to you. I saved it.
Oh,
I
I love
bookmarked
it.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, please. Yes.
So I'll send
Same
it
thing
to you.
with water. It's vague in my mind, but what they can put a sound, or maybe it's sand that I've seen on sand, and put a sound on it, and it'll shake into a pattern.
Yeah, sound vibrations. Yeah. I mean, this is like, I feel like this is not new stuff. I feel like it's just forgotten knowledge.
Well, it was hidden for a long time.
Yes, that's what I
It
mean.
was very, very hidden, really, till the turn of the 19th century. The first Sufi practitioner that came to the West, Hazrat Inayat Khan was his name, and he has a book, The Mysticism of Sound and Music. Another book I'm reading now called The Inner Journey. And this, it's so exciting in our day and age because the information came to the West 120 years ago and from the East, where these spiritual practices were practiced for thousands of years. They have and had the inner technology to bring a human person in our bodies into a nirvanic state, right? Into a blissful state, into a state beyond the physical material worlds, into the transcendent. And we have that today also, if you search for it. So in what I put together in the Daily Spiritual Practices program, is the subscription program, when I thought, well, people are looking really for more than meditation, and they have a hard time. A lot of people told me they have a hard time sitting still. They have a hard time making their mind stop. And that's the wrong thing to do. You can't make your mind stop. It's not meant to. So, of course, you're going to struggle with meditation if you think you have to stop your mind. You don't. But you can transcend your mind. So, but you can also do other spiritual practices. Chanting the Om, the Hu, or whatever word you love. I've been practicing with the word love, of wanting to go into that field of energy that we call loving, caring, empathy, compassion, wanting the well-being for others, wanting the well-being for myself. All these, to me, are the qualities of loving, and then connecting with other people and animals and nature. And I wanted to deepen. So I started practicing chanting inwardly the word love. Let's see where it takes me. This is a spiritual practice.
Have you seen, there's a lot of videos on YouTube that do just this. They have like sound and music to like meditate to. I use the term music very loosely. They're like, I think there's a name for it, like esoteric tones or something like that.
Well, there are tones you can listen to that will help calm your body, calm your
Mhm.
mind. But that is not transcendent spiritual practices.
Okay.
It feels great. No question, it'll feel great. What you do, here's a brief meditation lesson. Take a tone you love. I use love. You can use the word love. I use the vibrational frequency of Hu. You can use Om. Let your mind chant it inwardly, and then be quiet. So the reason listening to beautiful meditative music, it'll put you just in a physical state of relaxation, but it won't necessarily let you transcend into the soul realms.
Because part of you will be
Yeah,
concentrating on that sound. You need it to go away so that
I
you
do.
fully
Doesn't work
submit,
for
right?
me.
Yeah, I see what you're
It pulls
saying.
me down into the physical world listening to a sound. I can
Mm.
use it as a springboard, particularly if I'm all wound up or something and I want to shift gears. I can
Mhm.
use something like that as a springboard, but I won't sit down in a spiritual practice and listen to music. I will chant one of the Sanskrit tones. And I don't do Buddhist meditation. I've studied Buddhist meditation where you watch your mind. To me, that's just watching the mind, and my mind is not that interesting. I really just don't want to watch it. It takes me into places I'd rather transcend the mind. But
Mhm.
that's me. Some people, Buddhist meditation really works for them. I take the highest vibrational word, like Hu, chant it, be quiet and listen, move into stillness, and then go step into the sound current that current, that energy flow, that energy field, that like a tuning fork, you can start to attune to, and let it take me on this grand adventure into the spiritual realms. Open my eyes, my spiritual eyes there, open my spiritual ears, so that I can start to come into the awareness of those spiritual realms while I'm here on earth, right? We don't have to wait till we pass on. We can know exactly what's on the other side while we're here on earth by doing this brief meditation I'm telling you about. And it'll get easier and it'll get better. It took me
That's why it's a practice. The more you practice, the better it
Some
gets.
people are really attuned from the get-go. It took me about 10 years to really feel and hear the sound current. And I was telling a friend about it, and she's like, "Oh, does it sound like this?" I mean, she heard it in 5 minutes.
Wow.
So everybody's very, very different. I'm on the slow road, but
I've heard it taking a few years before you can really,
everybody's different.
Yeah.
Everybody's so different. It's not a bad thing at all for it to take its time, because then you start to get able to hold the higher frequencies and be able to ground it and live a normal everyday life, right? Mm-hmm. I've been to India, but I've been told, there are sadhus, these holy men that are so in the spiritual world that they can't function on the physical world, and people bring them food and they take care of them. Wow. Because they're just so gone in the spiritual levels. And in that culture, people understand that and will take care of them. In this culture, sometimes we put them in mental health institutions. Oh, yes. Right. I started studying when I was 19 with a sound current teacher called John Roger, and he talked about he worked in a mental health institution and how many awakened and enlightened beings there were there. They just
were mediums.
They just couldn't live in the everyday. They hadn't learned to be a multidimensional person, be awake and aware in spirit, in soul, in divinity, and live an everyday life. So the slow route is a great route, because you can start to integrate that spiritual life with physical life and live a life of dual awakening and awareness.
And you can adjust along the way. Mm-hmm. Right? So you're answering some of my questions before I even get to them. One of them was, who is John Roger?
Oh, John Roger. I was so fortunate. I had studied with a Hindu teacher from India when I was about 18, and introduced to Sufi teachers, a teacher called Rashad Field, who was a preeminent teacher in Sufism. And then I lived on this ranch, and I lived in a little tiny apartment without running water above the barn. But the big house I was a poor student at the time. The big house, then the Sufis moved out, and people that followed Native American traditions moved in, and I got to do sweat lodges on the ranch where I lived, and the Native Americans moved in the big ranch house. People that followed Native Americans, they would have a man called Archie Fire Lame Deer come, who was from the Rosebud. I think he's from the Rosebud Reservation. His father was John Fire Lame Deer, who wrote Lame Deer's Seeker of Visions, sort of a classic book on Lakota ceremonies. So I got, and his father was in Denver in the Veterans Hospital. That's why they were down here from South Dakota. So I got to they would invite me. I lived on the land. I was studying hard sciences at the University of Colorado. And I didn't know anything about this, but they said after the ceremonies, there would be a feast, and I could go to the feast. And I thought, yes, I want to go to the feast. Little did I know that when I did sweat lodge ceremonies, they would change my life. I and Archie Fire Lame Deer, the son of John Fire Lame Deer, ran those. They were all in Lakota. I don't know what they were saying. None of it was in English. But what I knew was that when I got out of the Sweat Lodge ceremony, I just felt transformed, transcendent, and it stayed with me. It stayed with me. I was just floating for about 3 days. I was floating.
Wow.
And then somewhere in those years, those first years, I went to a massage class, and this lady had a picture of this man on the wall. And I said, well, who's that? And she said, my spiritual teacher. And again, I was studying physics, chemistry, sciences, ecology, biology. And I was just like, rolled my eyes, my spiritual teacher. But I just couldn't get enough of her. Her energy was so beautiful and loving and kind. And there was just this, so she wasn't talking about it. So I had to kind of pull this out
of her. Right.
And she said, well, if you want to know more, they've got these discourses, these little monthly booklets, and you can sign up for them. So I signed up for them, and I knew then I was home. He taught the sound current, which was also what the Sufis taught. He taught, I mean, it was just, I don't know, somehow you know when you're home.
Yes.
And you know when you're home. And the practice, he taught that you have your own truth inside. A teacher can't do it for you, but the teacher can be a shortcut.
And can guide you.
They can guide you. They can give you, they can be, and especially on the inner realms, on the inner, it's ancient tradition in India that, and in Sufism, that a student will go study with an ascended, with an avatar, with a great master, with a guru. Mm-hmm. That study is really not about this world. It's about the inner worlds. And there's a whole initiation process. And those teachers have walked the inner worlds, the spiritual worlds, and lived their life here. So that as a student, they can take you through the inner worlds as a guide on those inner worlds.
They can show you the way, but you have to open the door, right?
You have to open the door, and spirit will keep knocking on your door, though. Because every life is a spiritual life.
Yes.
You might not just be aware of it yet. But this is our home. These spiritual levels, our home is this is not our home. We're just here for a short time to learn, to grow. 50% of our work here is healing.
We're like away at college.
We're like away at, maybe I feel like I'm away at kindergarten.
Right.
Just graduated preschool. And now I finally gotten into kindergarten.
I was listening to Darius on a podcast last night. I don't remember his last name. His name is Darius. And he has had a lot of out-of-body experiences. And he has these wild, like intricate pictures and diagrams of the different levels, like you say. And he tries really hard to explain it in layman's terms as much as he possibly can, but the language that he uses, and he knows that a lot of people are going to be looking at him like, what? But yeah, when you were talking about the different levels, that this is one of the levels of existence, that is exactly one of the things that he was saying last night. He had it drawn of like the different levels of existence. He's like,
so we have different levels of consciousness, right? So we're in a physical body. You can see we're talking really at the conscious level.
Consciousness.
But we're physical beings. And then we have another level just outside the physical called the astral level. It's kind of our imagination level. A lot of people sort of go in that level and think they're in heaven because it can be very beautiful. It can also be where there's a lot of strange things as well. Then
that's where astral travel comes from?
Yes, but it's not very high. It's not very high. You don't want to stay there. You can be there forever and think it's beautiful, but it's not very high. A lot of the mushrooms and the different things like that open you to the astral level. And people think they're very high, but they're not. They just don't know it because they've never been higher. So, and it looks so amazing because they've never even been there before. But you want to keep going. So after the astral is the causal, which is sort of our emotional level. It gets more refined. Then there's the subconscious, unconscious level. And we are not conscious of that, right? It's just below the surface of consciousness. And then there is what they call the mirror, the great mirror or great void. You can experience it a couple ways. And the mirror kind of shows you what your life is, who you are in this psychic material world, in this physical world. And they say, you know, my teacher, John Roger, used to say it takes great courage to see the face of God because you first have to look at your own face. So here's where the journey gets interesting, because now you get to see your doubts, your hesitations, your great things, your all of you. And in that cosmic mirror, then there is a bridge or a channel that then take you into what's called the soul levels. So a soul transcendent meditation, practicing the hue, for example, can take you through there into the soul levels, into what is eternal, into our true home. And I don't think you need anybody to tell you what's there. This is the great mystery. What I did was but there's no reference points. It's not physical. So there's no reference points. But what I did was I wrote down the sights and sounds, beings, everything I saw when I got up into the higher levels, and just wrote them down before they left me. Because real fast, when you come down from those higher levels, you'll forget everything. You don't have to do that. I did that for 25 years. So I could start to really have an awareness of the topography of the inner spiritual levels. But I won't tell you that, because that's for each person to learn on their own. And what I learned in the way I experience things goes through my own filters. I think each person has to see and open your spiritual eyes and ears yourself and learn those for yourself.
What is a theosophist?
A theosophical, I moved from the ranch, and then I moved to another place in the mountains also, and I lived next to a woman that was the president of the Theosophical Society, which is an esoteric form of Christianity. And I would have very long conversations with this woman that seemed so ancient to me. And I was like 20 at that point. And she taught me about some of what we were just talking about, the spiritual levels. You know, this information is not new, right? You started with that. It's ancient, and every tradition has different vocabulary for it, but much of it is the same. And through esoteric Christianity, she taught me about the soul realms and levels. She taught me sort of the esoteric explanation of what the Catholic Mass is, and, you know, what prayer and a contemplative practice really is. And we would have tea and goat milk and cookies, and I would learn about the mysteries of the universe as the Theosophists saw it.
Wow. Can you give us some examples?
Well, it's been so long, and
Some little, like, short, quick, sweet bullet points, just a couple.
That was over 50 years ago.
What?
So, yeah. Yeah, I was 20, I'm 68. So that was 48 years ago. As I can't think of any specific things. We have these long conversations. Yeah. I'm sorry, but
that's
I don't
okay.
have a specific gem for you. But from those conversations, I had the great fortune to live next to And then they kind of took me under their wing. Great spiritual teachers. Rashad Field, the Lame Deers, and learning from that, this woman from this. And then I moved and I had a Presbyterian minister on one side of me and a Lutheran minister on the other side of me. And I had great conversations there. One of my great friends was called Vine Deloria Jr., who wrote God is Red. He was the preeminent Lakota man that was a history professor, a religious professor, and a lawyer. And we would have great conversations about the Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and many of the oral traditions of Native American tribes. I just got really lucky, but I can just distill it all down to this. You can be your own teacher. The inner wisdom is inside of each person. The adventure of a spiritual life is, I think, the great adventure of existence. You can know where you're going after you shed this body. You can know the body that will be your next body, which others have called the soul body. You can find your inner master, your inner true self and its master, and follow that into the sound current, into the great current of what the Sufis call love and mercy, back into the heart of God and the majesty of that. And you can do all of that and more, because my words don't even touch it, by just taking some time for yourself every day and practicing spiritual practices that ring in your own heart.
So it's kind of like explaining what a sunset looks like and then actually seeing it.
Yeah.
Right? You can only just kind of give them an idea, but when you actually see it, you're just like, wow. Kind of like that, right?
And when you go wow, when you're in meditation or spiritual practice or stillness, you'll drop right back in the body. So you don't want to go wow.
Ooh, good to know.
There's a little tip for you. Just open your eyes and experience it and take it in and bask in it. Now that's hard to do, especially if it's your first experience with the inner sights and sounds, because it will be like, whoa, am I really here? Wow, am I really seeing that? But you'll drop right back into your body, because that's your conscious self talking.
Mm-hmm.
So you've brought yourself back into your conscious self. And you might want to do that because the energy gets pretty big. And you can say, okay, enough. I'm going back to earth. That's fine. That's fine to do. What my practice is these days is to hold that bliss, that ecstasy, that awakening, that awareness, hold it for longer and longer and longer periods of time, so that I can hold the awareness and awakening of the soul, of the God realms, and live my normal, everyday, fun life all at the same time.
What is, if you're just starting out, for our listeners and maybe also for myself, if you're just starting out with meditation, what amount of time that doesn't take too much away from your schedule of things that you really need to do is good for someone just starting out to do meditation? Should it be daily, or should you do it every other day, or what are your recommendations?
I'll tell you what will happen. If you start, now the program I did is 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay.
Everybody can do that. And in that, you have an invocation, inviting spirit into your consciousness and you into that spiritual consciousness. There's a teaching from one of the great spiritual masters throughout history, and then an affirmation to kind of start to help master your mind and emotions, and then a chant, so you can start to resonate with one of the higher spiritual Sanskrit words, and then a guided meditation. 5 to 7 minutes. It's all it takes. And I'll tell you what will start to happen. I'm getting goosebumps. I mean, it just touches me because
Aww.
you won't want to leave. You'll
Oh.
get there and you won't want to leave. You'll want to be longer and longer. Maybe not every day, because there's something you got to do that's pressing on you. But there'll be days. There'll be days where you'll go, I want to stay in the bliss. I want to stay in the awakening. I want to stay in this place where I am so loved and so cherished that it's breathtaking.
And it's sad to leave, but that can carry you through the day for sure.
It can carry you through your life.
Right.
And you
So,
share it with others.
yes, I was thinking that too. I was thinking about it'll help you to spread love in the world as you go about your day. I was thinking that. I should have said it. I was listening to and one of my favorite near death experiencers. His name is Vincent Tolman, and I've seen him on several different podcasts. He's the one that he was very young. He was in his early 20s, and him and his buddy had taken some workout supplement, but it was the concentrated form, so they ended up having a near death experience. And he was dead for over 45 minutes.
Oh, wow.
He was in a body bag and everything. It was crazy. The story is wild. But on one of his later podcasts, he was talking about that 30 minutes right as you're waking up, the first 30 minutes of the day as you're coming back into complete consciousness, and then that 30 minutes right as you're falling asleep. Those are the two magical times of the day where your subconscious and your conscious are kind of starting to kind of trade places. And when they're right here at this point, that's where the magic happens. That's where, and even Joe Dispenza says this, that's where you can retrain your brain for things. Do you feel like that's the best time to meditate, or should you get up and brush your teeth and get your coffee first and then try? What's the best time when you first wake up?
Whatever's best for you. Everybody's going to be different. And this is part of what every person's going to learn as you go. So I don't want to, what those two are saying wouldn't work for me, because I don't want to be in that sort of twilight place.
Mm-hmm.
I want to master myself enough that I can transcend all of that. I want to tell you something. You'll find this interesting.
Ooh.
I used to work in the film industry. Okay. And so I was working.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. I worked in the film industry, and I was working on a movie, it doesn't matter what it is, but it was like a kung fu movie, right? A martial arts movie. And it was one of the franchises. Oh, it was a ninja movie, The Three Ninjas. And I was working on the fight team, and they had this team from Hong Kong that came to do all the karate and the, kung fu.
Martial arts.
Martial arts. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
And we had the national Tai Chi champion. We called him Robert. He was part of the martial arts team. And we were shooting in a place in Denver where it's closed now, but coal to energy to electric. And it was so loud. It was illegal to go in there without earplugs. It was so loud. And then we were shooting fight scenes, so that was really loud. And then the director was yelling above it all, and to the fight team of what moves to make and where to go. It was so loud, you can't even believe it. And I look over, and there's Robert, the Tai Chi champion of China, sitting on this big pipe in total bliss, like I was looking at a Buddha, one of those Buddha statues in total bliss. And I looked at him in his meditation, and I thought, that's what I want. I want to be able to get be the eye of the storm anywhere, anytime. So I started practicing meditation at Chipotle at lunchtime.
Wow.
It's so loud in where I live in Boulder, Colorado, so loud at Chipotle that it was the perfect place to practice. And I practiced that for 20 years.
Do you know Alex Ferrari?
Mm-mm.
Okay. He was in the film industry as well. And he has when I kind of started down this path back in 2021, late 2021, after my mom passed, I started seeing near death experience videos pop up in my feed. And that's kind of how I kind of really got started. And I haven't stopped since. And here I am starting my own podcast on it. But Alex Ferrari had a podcast that was very new at the time. I have literally watched it grow over the past 3 years, big time. But he used to be in the film industry as well. And check out his podcast on YouTube. It's called Next Level Soul. I think you'll really love it.
Oh.
Yeah.
So the point of that story is you could be in the transcendent place anytime, anywhere. So and you can train yourself for that to overcome the noise, the sound, so is there a better time? It's the time when you can sit down and do it. That's the best time.
Right.
If I wanted to have an external time, for me, it's about 2 a.m. where the world is so quiet.
Yeah.
But I don't want to rely on that. I want to be able to do it anytime, anywhere. I want to be able to transcend, because I'm not just going in my spiritual practices for the being that can sit down and meditate and go into the high realms. I want to be in the high realms while I'm talking to you, while I'm talking to my neighbor. I want that multidimensional awareness. I want to be that multidimensional spiritual being. The great enlightened, and I'm not anywhere close to that, but the great enlightened beings are in all places at all times and aware of it. So I know that's a tall order and it's a lot to aspire to, but why not? Why not aspire to that?
Right.
So is there, and I will tell you this also, before I get out of bed, so I do get up early before the sun, and that is my time, one of my times for quiet meditation, but I like to meditate anywhere with my eyes open, sitting up. I don't have to sit with my legs crossed and my fingers in a certain way. I don't have to, no,
Or
anywhere.
like a walking meditation. Go for a walk.
I actually took a walking meditation a few days with Thich Nhat Hanh. I had the privilege of doing that. And so one of my spiritual practices is walking and listening to the sound current as I walk, and just coming into that current while I'm walking, so that my physical body can start to attune and be present. But so I do get up before I wake myself up before the sun rises. It's a really quiet time. And I don't have a time, I don't impose a time frame on myself. But I want to, before I get out of bed and go into the world, I want to hit that divine light, that radiant light, and know it. And I won't go into the day until I do that. So that's something, that's a thing I do impose upon myself. I think as you practice this, you'll find, each person will find their own daily spiritual practices. And maybe it's walking in the woods. Maybe it's playing with your dog. Maybe it's listening to a beautiful chant. Maybe it's going into complete stillness. The big thing is to listen, though. No matter what anybody says, this time, that time, subconscious, unconscious, I don't get into any of that. That's too complicated for me. I want it simple. All that's way too complicated for me. I just want to sit in stillness at times when I can, wherever I am, and listen to the beauty of God's voice.
So there are 5 spiritual daily practices, meditations. Can you go over them?
So an invocation, right? So we want to prepare the place. Just like you prepare a garden to plant the seeds, we want to prepare the place inside ourselves. And you can do that by being real quiet, and inviting spirit to come, and your own soul, right? All this soul transcendence comes through your own soul. So to develop a relationship with your soul, that spiritual part of yourself, many names for it: your true self, your self-realized self, your God self,
Higher self. Yeah.
higher self. I don't use higher self. Now we get sort of complicated. Okay, so
higher meaning up the levels.
well, there's actually
that was a guess.
Okay, so in the Kahuna tradition, there are 3 selves. Your basic self, which is kind of like your child within. It keeps your blood running. It keeps your body going. It also wants what it wants. There's your conscious self. We're talking at the conscious level. And then there's an entity called your high self. And that is like the devil and the angel and the cartoons that are on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Self is like that, but it's different than the soul. It is different than the soul. It is a way to connect to your soul. So now we're getting into metaphysics where it does get a little bit complicated. But I look at that, at least for me, it's my real creative part. And it's the part that knows my destiny, my purpose, but it interacts with me here. It's almost like an angel, but it interacts with me here, where the soul can come here, but it lives in the soul realms above the psychic material world, above that mirror of consciousness.
I remember years and years and years ago, I read this book called Journey of Souls, and it was a psychologist, I believe, who would hypnotize patients to kind of help them get past these really weird blocks or whatever that they had. And while he would hypnotize them, like unexplainable pains, like, oh, my neck's been hurting my whole life and I can't get rid of it, was an example. And he would hypnotize them to try to, help cure them. And while he had them under, he stumbled onto this by accident. He heard people talking about past lives and life between lives. So he wrote this book called Journey of Souls. And it's actually a compilation of a gathering of a lot of these different hypnotize sessions that he did with his clients. And yeah, it was just wild.
Well, in Hindu and many traditions, Buddhism, we are in a chain of incarnations. And in that chain of incarnations, part of everything that I've been talking about is liberation from that chain of incarnations. Some of it we have to balance. We have to balance cause and effect. So whatever missteps we may have made, which actually are only the judgments of the missteps. Really important to distinguish this. It's not the actual missteps or things we did in another life. It's the judgments of those that keep us tethered to one incarnation after another. And I'm not saying this out of belief. I'm saying this because I always remembered a lot of my lifetimes. I used to tell my mom, oh, Mom, remember when we were on the plantation? And, oh, remember Germany? And I remember Germany, and we used to go to and my mom took me to a doctor. It's like, why is my daughter telling me a lot of information about places she's never been?
There's a lot of stories like that.
So I learned pretty quick to not talk about those things. And I'm not sure they're very helpful anyway. When you start to really get into the transcendent path, knowing about our past lives doesn't get us anywhere. That's why most of us are not born remembering them.
Right.
It's not that useful.
This guy had the one that I was telling you about where they had a pain in their neck, um, in a past life had got shot by an arrow, and
Mm.
it was a man that he was hypnotizing, but she was a woman in this past life, and they were part of a caravan that was traveling west and got, coming across Indians and stuff, and got shot in the neck and died, and that's where the pain was coming from. And after that hypnotherapy session, the pain was gone.
Yeah,
So
you can clear a lot of stuff like that and going back. So there is some value to knowing your past lives, but you don't even necessarily have to know the details.
right.
But what you can do, and what I do sometimes is go, is this from this life or another life?
Yeah.
Can I clear it? And then I clear things through the soul consciousness. Or I'll go, a lot of things we pick up from other people, and I'll go, is this mine or somebody else's?
Mhm.
Have you ever walked in a room and somebody's very upset about something, maybe your corporation, and it's the little kitchen cooler room, and somebody's sharing their heart, and you can feel that vibe in there, and
Yes.
you walk out and you still feel that vibe. You just walk
Yeah, that's why people don't like being around angry people or whatever.
you just
And
walk
that's where
out.
that saying, the 5 people you surround yourself with the most are who you are going to start emulating. Yeah.
And sometimes you can't avoid it,
Mhm.
but you can clear it later.
Right.
You can clear it, just bringing that soul energy in. So we were talking about the 5 spiritual practices, and one is the
Mm.
invitation to that soul energy. And
Yeah.
part of the invitation for that is, let's let it go where there's places hurting. Let's let it go to the places that the aches and the pains, or the doubts, the disappointments, the rejections, anything that's disturbing you, physical, emotional, mental, and invite that in, because we have grace. One of the things about the chain of incarnations is that for eons and eons, we have to balance, humans had to balance cause and effect. We had to balance the cause of the effects. But then grace came. That's like a free ticket, get out of jail free. Here,
Mhm.
you're in the soul realm. You're an expanded consciousness, or it's just a gift. It's just a gift here. We'll just clear that for you. I think everybody's experienced that one time or another.
Yeah, there was one of my favorite near-death experiences, and this guy was driving his family home from visiting his wife's parents, and they got into a car accident. And while he was recovering in the hospital, two of his wife and his little baby, infant baby, passed at the scene of the accident. And while he was recovering in the hospital, he had some out of body experiences. And one of them was, he was like going around the hospital and stuff. But at one point, he saw like this long hallway, and there was a light at the end of the hallway. And he went down to the end of the hallway, and he noticed it was his infant son laying in the crib, and
Oh,
he was like, oh, he looks so perfect. He looks so beautiful. And he picked him up and was holding him, and he was feeling all this guilt. I'm getting ready to tear up just talking about it. He was feeling all this guilt because he was the one driving the car. And then there was this loving presence that kind of came behind him and was like, you know, to the main things that he said was, I can't believe I'm responsible for this one losing his life. And he's like, he was judging himself basically. And the loving presence was like, that's your judgment, not ours. Like, we
mm.
love you unconditionally, and there are no mistakes.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow, that was deep. But
That's a beautiful story. There
yeah.
are many stories, and when you get on the spiritual path, there's, you're going to experience phenomena, but it's not about the phenomena. It's about
About
you.
what you take from it.
Well, it's about you becoming the highest soul being you can. And then you experience phenomena and you go, okay. I mean, it's just it's just, the stories are fun, but when you really, and they do help you to go, oh, to get some kind of validation. And then there's a point where you don't need validation anymore.
Yeah.
You are the story of the beautiful spiritual things that happen in existence. You become the story. And those things happen all around you.
Yes.
That's what starts to happen. That's when we were talking about my teacher, John Roger. I mean, things happened around him all the time. And there's so many stories of phenomenon around him. There was a story of somebody was listening to him in a seminar, and they're like, oh, I gotta go because I forgot to turn the oven off. And John Rogers said, don't worry about that. And when the man got home, the oven was off, but the bread was baked. But John Rogers stopped doing that kind of thing because people started going to him for the phenomena.
Right.
And that's not what the spiritual path is.
Right.
Yes, there's great healings that can happen. There's great miracles. There's great in every life, but that's not what that path really is. That path is becoming who you truly are. And the
Right. And
miracles
that's why we forget, so that we can discover it like authentically and organically. Right.
I'm not sure I followed you. That's why we forget.
So if you're always seeking the phenomena,
Yes.
the reason why you said it's not, people were coming to him for the phenomena, and then you said we're supposed to, that's not what it's about. It's about our own personal discovery and things like that. And I said that makes sense as to why, one of the many reasons why we have a forgetting when we incarnate here, so that we can go on that personal discovery. Because if you remember everything, what's there to discover? Right.
Well, most of us aren't enlightened yet. If
Right.
we were, we would remember. And there are beings that come here and they remember everything. They're not talking about it though. There's not going to be very many at all that are going to talk about it, because it's each and every person's own journey. And because them talking about it, not really going to help you. You have to sit down and put your own seat of your own pants. This is what John Rogers used to say, in the seat of the chair, and lift yourself into those spiritual realms so you know for yourself and you become that yourself.
Even if they did try to tell us about it, you probably won't be able to hear it until you're ready to hear it. Right.
I think that's true. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of truth in that. And, the seeds keep getting planted.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And they keep
And then,
getting watered until a little sprout happens.
yeah. And we all have that sprout, when it's a full blown tree. That's what I'm working towards.
Right.
And inviting. So we do the first one is an invitation to all of that. The second one, to keep our mind and emotions on the right track, is I take a teaching from one of those great enlightened masters throughout history. Rumi, Kabir, John Roger, his protege, John Morton, Socrates, one of these enlightened beings. And whoever wrote it down for them, unless they wrote, I take one of those and then I do an affirmation for that. And that's really helpful to keep a person's mind and emotions going down the track you want to, because the world is seductive. It'll try every way it can to bring you doubt, disturbance, get you off the path,
Distract you.
distract you. So little tricks like that to keep you on the path. And then I I do a guided meditation with stillness in it and a chant of one of the ancient Sanskrit, what's called bija mantras, seed mantras, that has an energy there. And 5 to 7 minutes, and you get your spiritual practices in.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah.
So, and you've been on this adventure for 50 years or longer.
Well, 50 years where I went, that's my teacher, and I want to learn what he has to share and follow his guidance. And he also traveled for 50 years doing seminars, 30,000 seminars he did, maybe more, around the world.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Who's keeping
27
count?
books. Who's keeping count?
You're right. That's a lot.
But probably really I started when I was 5, and I wanted to pull back the curtain and say, what's really here? And then I did a contemplative practice. I didn't know that that's what it was. But when I was like 12 and 13, every day after school, I would go to my church. The doors were always open, and I would just sit in stillness. And I just did that every day. And then when I got old enough to, find my own way, as I said earlier, I found a Hindu teacher, taught a mantra meditation, studied with Rashad Field, a Sufi, had the Native American, was at there some of their traditions. And then I found John Roger, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna learn what everything he has to teach. But he taught, go inside yourself.
Right. We have a whole universe inside us. I think I heard that on a movie somewhere. Oh, I remember what it was. Vanilla Sky.
I don't know what that is.
The movie Vanilla Sky.
I never saw it.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Well, we have all universes inside of us. We have everything in existence, everything created, and that which is not created, the formless, is inside of us. And we have access to it. Now, that might be a lot for a little human brain and consciousness to absorb, but we can absorb quite a bit of it.
Well,
And
it makes sense. If we are all one and we're all connected, that would encompass everything, right?
of course, that's it. You got the logic. Now I invite you to have the experience.
Okay. Invitation accepted.
All right.
So, if anybody listening would like to explore the daily meditation practices and ways to expand your spirituality, they can go to Catherine's website, soulandspirit.net. I love that name. That's pretty wild. And on that website, there are several different things. I was playing around there, checking everything, checking out all the things myself there for a while. You have complimentary daily inspirational teachings.
Those are from the enlightened avatar beings throughout history that I mentioned. And I love reading different things, and I just curated and pulled out a lot of different quotes from them. Rumi
Your
Kabir,
favorite,
Hafiz, yeah.
your
And
collection of
scriptures
favorites.
too, some from the Quran, the Bible, the Old Testament, New Testament, the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, many of those texts. And every day you'll get one if you'd like one.
Oh, nice. Okay. So you get one a day. They're not just all thrown at you at once. It's just like a slow drip on a day.
One a day.
And then there's a daily spiritual practice program.
That's what I was talking about, where I do the 5 spiritual practices in 5 to 7 minutes a day. And that's, you just stay in that state, and you can go on for 20 minutes or half hour, an hour, but it's a good place to start. And it's a good springboard to just get into that vibe, like a tuning fork of the soul realms.
Yeah, I need to get back onto that little morning routine. I had read this book, The Miracle Morning, and then there was an app that went with it, and it was like every morning. They had like recorded little meditations that you could use, and there was like a 5 to 7 minute one. It was like a journal workout, whether it's calisthenics or whatever, your meditation, and then there was like a little checklist of things to do every morning.
Nice. Nice. So I would encourage people, there's a lot of different meditations. So many. There's so many out there. Look for the ones, you can use mine, but if you don't use mine, look for the ones that are transcendent, not just the ones that relax the body. Then you're just still playing in the body. Go for the ones that are transcendent into soul and spirit.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you.
having you.
It was a pleasure to be here and talk about my favorite subject, and it sounds like yours.
Yeah. So I have two questions that I like to ask all my guests at the end of the show. And the first one is, what do you think is the meaning of life?
Okay, the biggest question there is, really. What is the meaning of life? I think it's to love. I think we come here to love
I
and
love
to
that.
learn what love is, and then to follow it back home.
Aw, I love that. And the second question is, if you could leave our guest with a piece of profound advice, potentially life-changing, what would that be?
Know that you're a soul living in a human body. The soul is eternal, and it's all loving, and it's all grace and beauty and bliss and happiness. And you can know that while you live here.
Through meditation. Wrap it all up with a nice little bow.
Yes, beautiful, Shauna, beautiful.
Love it. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And hang back after the show and we'll have a little chat before we part ways. And I just want to thank you so much.
It's been beautiful, yeah.
Thank you. All right. We'll see you next time, guys. Bye.